Emmanuel Macron has outlined France's new strategy in Africa. The French president announcing a reduction in the number of French troops on the continent. Macron adding France will only run army bases partnered with African countries. The unveiling of the new strategy comes on the eve of Macron's four-nation tour of Central Africa. This at a time when anti-French sentiment is running high in some former colonies.
Many would like to push us into a competition that I believe belongs in the past. This would be falling into a trap set by those who want us to try and show our might. Look, some are coming with their armies and mercenaries. Go and compete with them. I don't believe in this. These are ways of the past, where we show our military might and share exclusive ties with certain leaders and believe that economic markets are just ours because we were there first. We'd fight to play centre stage. I think those times are over.
We can now bring in our international affairs editor, Philip Turle. Philip, great to see you. Talk us through some of the main takeaways of what Macron outlined there.
Okay, so this is the situation. France plays an important role in Africa. It has military bases in several African countries. As you may know, France has been kicked out of two countries in the last year. One is Mali and one is Burkina Faso. And France is perceived in these countries as being the former colonial power, but still wanting to play some kind of role in the military setup of the country. And it's been used against France's image to the detriment of other forces, notably the Wagner force from Russia. So France has been losing ground in West Africa over the past few years. So this is another attempt by Emmanuel Macron to try to put the record straight. He's on his four-nation trip beginning today with a visit to Gabon, but he's also going to Congo-Brazzaville, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he's also going to go to Angola. So this is a four-nation trip, a very rapid four-nation trip over 4 days, 1 day in each country, but it's to put the French back on the rails to improve France's image in Africa. And notably what Emmanuel Macron wants to do are three things. The first one is to strike up partnerships with Africa for culture, for youth, for industry, where there will be no longer France perceived as coming in to take what it can from African countries, but to strike up an equal partnership with those African nations it has involvement in. The second one, you mentioned it in your introduction, that is a reduction of France's military in Africa. He wants to create, Emmanuel Macron, partnerships and academies to train African forces with the help of the French and to bring in other African partners if necessary, or if the African country where those bases are requires that, then France will be okay with that decision. And the third thing is to return artifacts to Africa which have been stolen or pillaged by French forces or French people over the years and which are now on show in French museums. That has already happened as far as Benin is concerned. Ivory Coast has also asked for artefacts to be returned. Emmanuel Macron says that is perfectly fine. We are willing to talk about that with African countries and to return those artefacts as necessary so they can go on show in museums where they should be on show in African countries.
You mentioned Mali. French forces did withdraw from Mali last year, and clearly now we have Russia that's quite present in the country with its Wagner mercenary group, quite active in Mali. Yet the president, when he was making his announcement, he didn't really talk about Russia or the Wagner group.
Well, not directly in the speech. He was pushed into this by journalists afterwards. There was no mention of either Russia or the Wagner forces while Emmanuel Macron was speaking yesterday afternoon. But he made a couple of comments afterwards. One of them was Wagner he described as the life insurance of failing regimes in Africa, which was really a hit towards the authorities in Mali, where Wagner forces are known to be taking the place basically of what the French were doing before that. There's also suspicion that there may be Wagner forces in Burkina Faso and certainly in the Central African Republic. Emmanuel Macron saying that France would not become the ideal scapegoat of the African continent. I think what the French perceive this as is that although Wagner is present in Africa, it's only on a short-term basis. Wagner has been brought in to prop up certain regimes, certainly in Mali, which is what he was indicating yesterday. But he seems to believe that maybe in the future people will get tired of this and France will refine the position that it used to have in Africa as really one which is there to protect the African people and not to use Africa for its own interests.
We'll see how things pan out. We have, Russia, China, and the West jostling for influence on the continent. Thank you very much for that, Philip Turle there.